Have the developers lied to you? Has the hype train been derailed? Do you really need a supercomputer to even play KSP2? Mistakes were definitely made. Which ones? Let's find out together. Hello everybody and welcome! We are just mere days away from Kerbal Space Program 2 going early access, and there have been some interesting developments in the past weeks, or days even. Originally I wanted to make a video about the recently published trailer and what cool new things we could see in there, especially in regards to building vehicles in the VAB. A lot to see there. But after what happened with the release of the system requirements for KSP2, I think I'd better address this topic in particular and why you would do good to curb your expectations in general when it comes to the early access release of KSP2 on February 24th. If you're out of the loop, let me fill you in real quick. Just 1 week ahead of the planned release, system requirements for Kerbal Space Program 2 Early Access were published on the official developers' Discord, and they appear to be demanding. The minimum specs ask for rather modest CPUs, but comparatively beefy graphics cards, listing an NVIDIA RTX 2060 and AMD Radeon 5600 XT as well as 12 GB of RAM. The recommended section even had an RTX 3080 and 6800 XT in there. Seconds later, the internet exploded, especially the official Discord. People were angry, like torches and pitchforks angry. About an hour after posting that image, they added some additional information claiming that the minimum spec is for 1080p resolution at low settings, while the recommended is for 1440p at high settings. The message further stated that, and I'm going to quote here, "The system requirements are to ensure high-quality experience while playing KSP2 in a variety of in-game scenarios. KSP2 will work across a wide variety of hardware beyond what is listed in our recommended specs, with performance scaling based on the size and complexity of the crafts you build. Throughout the early access period, our development team will continue to prioritize performance optimization to ensure an optimal gameplay experience for as many Kerbonauts as possible." Keep 2 points of that message in mind, we'll get to them later. First, performance scaling based on the size and complexity of the crafts you build. We'll get to that really late in the video. Second, performance optimization throughout early access. But we're not done yet, because there was additional information. On the official KSP website, the minimum requirements now also include a 1070 Ti GPU. Something else that happened: a Discord user by the name of NoHos posted a comparison chart. I think it was lifted from Tom's Hardware or some other PC review site and marked where the minimum and recommended spec would fall on various graphics cards. But there is one very important information people who were up in arms about the released minimum specs maybe didn't register at first. Aside from the version of the requirements image having an AMD Radeon card instead of AMD. And that is the number on the bottom left. Version 0.1.x. That's the build number of the first early access release you will get on February 24th. Why is that important? Remember the second point I mentioned earlier: performance optimization throughout early access. KSP community lead Michael Reno confirmed on Twitter that the listed requirements are not the minimum spec for the full release or even upcoming early access updates, adding further information in a later tweet saying that there is already much performance tuning in the pipeline. Mike also admitted that all of this could have been communicated better than it was. Alright, so a couple of things went wrong here. Let's start with the current landscape of PC gaming. Steam, the biggest digital distribution platform for PC games, reports the hardware of their users on a monthly basis. Based on the data of January 2023, less than 35% of Steam users meet or exceed the published minimum system requirements for KSP2 Early Access. Less than 4% exceed the recommended specs. To use the community lingo, that's suboptimal if you want your product to become a wide success. Here's why I am extremely confident that this will not stay this way and that the developers speak the truth when they're saying performance will be optimized. Capitalism! Kerbal Space Program 2 is developed by Intercept Games and published by Private Division, themselves a subsidiary of Take-Two Interactive. They're a big corporation and there is no timeline in this universe where a corporation like that would accept a multi-year, multi-million-dollar development project to only be accessible by a third of their potential customer base. So there will be performance improvements down the line. That's for certain. What went wrong on the side of Private Division was not realizing that many of those roughly 70% of Steam users not meeting the minimum requirements would also like to play KSP2 in early access. KSP1 was always about sharing the love for space and spaceflight with as many people as possible. And based on the discussions I had so far with the developers at multiple occasions over the past years, I am certain that they also want to fulfill on that promise for KSP2. They always said that they want to make the game even more accessible than the original. And I'm pretty sure they didn't mean only people with beefy graphics cards. To put it short, expectation management was extremely bad on this particular front. Then there was the way the spec requirements were published. First, just the image on Discord. Then, 1 hour later, a clarification. Then an update on the website. And then individual tweets explaining the situation. Again, suboptimal. How could this have gone better? Maybe something along the lines of, hey guys, the first early access builds will be more demanding on hardware than future iterations. Here's the specs, and here's the resolutions and settings we expect the game to run on. Again, this is preliminary and not set in stone. Please be patient, we will improve this soon. Putting it like that could have probably reduced the amount of backlash they faced after publishing the specs. Of course, it's easy for me to say, especially with the power of hindsight. Let's just hope that the people involved with the communication around KSP2 will learn from this experience. But there is also something we as a community should learn from this, and there's even precedent for this from other games. Early access is exactly that. An early version of a game that is still in development. The hype train for KSP2 has been rolling incredibly strong and steady for years now, and the social media team for KSP have been actively putting more coals into the furnace. Which is understandable, they want this to be a success. Again, capitalism! But there's a lot missing from the game. No science or career modes, no colonies, no interstellar travel, no multiplayer, also as far as we've seen no robotics and maybe some other features missing. And now we also have basically confirmation that the game's performance is not optimized. All of that for an asking price of $50. And with this we've finally come to the title of the video. Prepare to be disappointed. If you have expected to already get a fully polished experience, because it surely isn't there yet. There will be bugs, there will be features missing, there will be room for optimization. Basically, if you're going to buy KSP2 Early Access, you will be buying into a promise. The promise of the best space game ever. After Early Access ends. And there's two ways you can go about that. Complain and boycott the game, or be part of the early access development and give constructive feedback on what they can do better. Unfortunately, I was not able to play it yet, but there are glimpses I've seen that keep me hopeful that Kerbal Space Program 2 is going to improve on the original even at this early stage of development. And now I finally talk about the first point I highlighted earlier. Performance scaling based on the size and complexity of the crafts you build. If you're a fan of this channel, you very likely know some of my larger creations. The results you see here on YouTube are usually sped up significantly. I run a pretty beefy system even for today's standards, a 3900X 12-core CPU, RTX 3090 GPU and 64GB of RAM. But there are situations in KSP1 where I wouldn't describe my experience in frames per second, more like seconds per frame. If we're being honest, Kerbal Space Program 1 and 2 alike are physics simulations with the game laid on top of them. Your experience will vary depending on what you do and how intense of a load you put on the simulation. The more complex the vehicles, the less performance you will get out of the game, which makes defining a minimum and recommended spec rather difficult if we're being honest. But what should you do? Wait for optimized builds of KSP2? Buy a new computer? I suggest to hold off on that, and I want to help all of you to make an informed decision as a consumer. How? Well, here's what I'm going to do. I not only have my own PC, I have a few others around the house and a spare RTX 2080 Super graphics card. When I get my hands on KSP2, I will build a vehicle with more than 1000 parts. And I will try it out on my rig, a PC with an AMD CPU with integrated graphics, the same system with the 2080 Super installed, and I will try it out on my laptop with integrated graphics. Then I will show you the results, and you can be the judge on whether or not the published specs are really minimum or not. I hope this was helpful for you to put the entire minimum spec requirements discussion into a little bit of context. Personally, I think it's too early for torches and pitchforks. It's also too early to run out there and buy new hardware. Or shower KSP2 with praise. Wait for the first reviews to come in. Watch out for people playing it on PCs with low-performing hardware and listen to what they have to say. I'm sure there will still be a lot of people with a 1660 or something that will take the plunge and try KSP2 out despite not meeting the official system requirements. And as I said, I will keep you informed about how my own testing goes, when I finally get a chance to do so.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel for more and follow me on my social thingies. The links are in the description. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.